With its triumph at the Oscars, including the Best Actress award for Mikey Madison, Anora, directed by Sean Baker, has established itself as the must-see film of the year. Yet behind this success lies a profoundly problematic work that, under the guise of exploring the life of a stripper, perpetuates the worst clichés of the male gaze on women. A quick warning, spoilers ahead in this analysis. Before diving into the heart of the matter, a quick reminder. We love pop culture. Whether it's dissecting a major cinematic work, exploring the life of a misunderstood actress, or revisiting great tragedies and injustices, we analyze and discuss with no filter. So subscribe, like this video, leave your comments, and share it with everyone. The plot. Anora, nicknamed Annie, is a young stripper from Brighton Beach, a Russian-speaking neighborhood in Brooklyn. One night, she is assigned to a 21-year-old client, an eccentric and free-spending Russian named Vanya. Partly because she speaks a bit of Russian, a language she learned from her Uzbek grandmother. After several encounters, Vanya offers her a large sum to stay with him, and they eventually marry in Las Vegas. However, Annie quickly realizes that Vanya's main goal is to secure a green card and avoid returning to Russia. Their marriage enrages Vanya's parents, who send their henchmen to force Annie to annul the union, by any means necessary. After a violent confrontation, she reluctantly agrees and travels with Vanya to Las Vegas to officially annul the marriage. Influenced by his family, Vanya heartlessly abandons her, leaving her humiliated. Back in New York, Annie shares a heartfelt moment with Igor, one of the henchmen, before breaking down in tears, realizing the harsh reality of a world she will never truly belong to. The review. Much like another recent Cannes Palme d'Or winner, Ruben Östlund's gripping triangle of sadness, Anora presents itself as a bittersweet and often extravagant satire of the wealthy elite. Structurally, the film unfolds in two distinct movements. It begins with a slow-paced first act, focusing on the growing affection between Annie and Vanya despite their vast differences. This section, while psychologically tense, struggles to fully captivate, with some sequences resembling a music video more than a solid dramatic progression. Gradually, the film shifts into a borderline grotesque drama, featuring extended scenes of intimidation by henchmen and collective hysteria that ultimately undermine the script's credibility. One could also see the film as structured in three acts. The first immerses the audience in the nocturnal world of excess and superficiality. The second explores Annie's euphoria as she seemingly lives a dream, being proposed to by a Russian billionaire, and the third plunges into disillusionment, orchestrated through a progressively chaotic downfall that is both humorous and melancholic. Once the whirlwind of partying fades, the modern-day pretty woman's carriage turns into a pumpkin, revealing the cruel reality of an unforgiving world. That's actually the only valid comparison with Pretty Woman. Anora may offer a more realistic and less idealized ending than the 90s classic, but while Julia Roberts managed to humanize Vivian, turning her into a pop culture icon, Mikey Madison is trapped in a role that prevents her from transcending a rigid script. And that's the core issue. Annie remains an enigma, a foul-mouthed stripper alternating between excessive profanity and hysterical crying fits. She never develops any real depth. Unlike Ramona and Destiny in Hustlers, who embody ambitious, intelligent, and resilient women, Annie remains a hollow figure, deprived of any authentic human dimension. Her story is told by others, for others, reducing her to an archetype rather than a fully realized character. Everything's wrong with Anora. The film suffers from a glaring lack of character development. Annie is reduced to the cliché of the hooker with a heart of gold, while Vanya is an exaggerated caricature, an immature, selfish rich kid whose actions make little sense beyond serving as a plot device. The characters' motivations remain vague, and their interactions lack depth. The film wastes 45 minutes searching for Vanya when that time could have been better spent developing Annie, the titular character. It could have explored how weak her professional motivations really are, given that she immediately seizes the first opportunity to leave the nightlife and settle down by marrying a rich man. Again, we could have gained some insight into her background, her social origins, what led her into this world, what she had to sacrifice, and even a deeper reflection on her social status. But Anora prefers to stay on the surface. One particularly frustrating aspect is the suggestion that Annie has Uzbek roots, only for the film to do nothing with it. This could have been an interesting angle to explore, especially if it had been established that she came from a Muslim cultural background. But I suspect that Sean Baker doesn't like complex stories. Anora claims to be a satire of the wealthy and consumerist society, but fails to deliver a coherent message. The scenes involving confrontations with Vanya's family's henchmen are so outrageously exaggerated that they become ridiculous, stripping the film of any credibility. It constantly oscillates between social drama and absurd comedy, never finding a balanced or convincing tone. For a film that aspires to address sex work, its take feels remarkably shallow, even superficial. It also aligns with a troubling cultural trend: the increasing normalization of sex work, particularly through social media or platforms like OnlyFans. While mainstream culture now celebrates artists with backgrounds in the industry, it rarely examines the precarious conditions, risks, and dangers that come with it. Anora contributes to this narrative by offering a sanitized, glamorized version of sex work, ignoring the grimmer realities of the profession. The social realities of Annie's job, repressive laws, health risks, structural violence, are completely overlooked, reducing her experience to an empty aesthetic devoid of depth and meaning. Another troubling aspect of Anora is its depiction of Russians, once again falling into the same Hollywood stereotypes often used against Arabs or Muslims in American films. The Russian characters, especially Vanya's family, are portrayed as violent, brutal, and devoid of nuance. The henchmen are presented as brainless thugs, while Vanya's parents embody greed and cruelty with no complexity. Rather than exploring their motivations or adding layers to their humanity, the film reduces them to crude caricatures, severely weakening its narrative. This black and white portrayal of Russians as the absolute villains is not only simplistic, but also highly problematic in a geopolitical climate where tensions between the West and Russia are already heightened. We keep hearing about the film's supposedly superb conclusion. Well, while it does have a melancholic touch, it arrives far too late to salvage the whole experience. It feels like a last-ditch effort to inject some humanity into Annie through an emotional scene with Igor, one of Vanya's henchmen. But upon closer examination, this scene raises a deeply troubling issue. Igor, after participating in Annie's abduction and assault, suddenly becomes the person with whom she shares a moment of intimacy and vulnerability. This narrative choice sends a highly problematic message, normalizing a toxic power dynamic and suggesting some form of redemption or connection where there is none. Such a portrayal reinforces dangerous storytelling patterns rather than offering any meaningful depth or reflection. I can't help but wonder, is Anora ultimately just another male fantasy? A glorified version of the sexy yet innocent prostitute, designed by and for the male gaze? Annie's character follows a painfully familiar pattern in male-written narratives about women. She must be alluring, but not too complex or clever. She must be exploitable, yet men shouldn't feel guilty about exploiting her. That's why she expresses no anger, no resistance, not even a real sense of self-awareness. She accepts the system as it is, making her exploitation seem acceptable, even mundane. The real problem is that we feel no empathy for Annie because we know nothing about her. Nothing about her past, her emotions, or her aspirations. She remains a hollow figure, an archetype, rather than a fully realized character. The thing that pisses me off the most about Annie: her pathetic passivity. Instead of sitting around like some helpless damsel, she should have grabbed the reins and rewritten the damn story herself. Imagine this: she calls the cops, tells them she's being held hostage, and lets them drag Vanya's sorry ass out in cuffs. Then, instead of wasting another second on that weak, spineless man-child, she tracks him down herself, only to confirm what we all knew. He's nothing but a soft, clueless little boy who couldn't lead a goldfish. let alone a relationship. And then, she hires the most savage, bloodthirsty lawyer money can buy. The kind who makes men like Vanya cry in courtrooms and makes sure she takes him for every last cent. No mercy, she'd annihilate him. First, to punish him for being the most insufferable loser on earth. Second, to humiliate his pathetic silver spoon-fed family for raising such a disappointment. Now that would have been a story worth telling. Hollywood and feminism. I've previously analyzed the feminist dimensions of films like Barbie, but whether Anora can be considered feminist is particularly intriguing. The film gives me a deep sense of discomfort, a disturbing feeling about how male directors imagine female sexuality in such a shallow and one-dimensional way. In Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig, the protagonist's existential awakening begins with reflections on death and the human condition. In Poor Things, Bella's joy stems from discovering and exploring her sexuality. But in Anora, the heroine, a sex worker, has fully internalized the idea of using her body as currency, right up until the film's final scene, all while displaying a baffling naivety about the world around her. The film's anti-feminist undertones are also worth noting. Female relationships in Anora are marked by rivalry and jealousy, an overused cliché that adds nothing to the story. Annie is at odds with her sister, in competition with her co-workers, and despised by Vanya's mother. This portrayal of women as natural enemies is not only dull, but also deeply regressive, reinforcing toxic stereotypes rather than challenging them. Last year, when Poor Things won Best Actress, I was deeply disturbed by its portrayal of women, which I found offensive. Emma Stone's character was a mere sexual object, and the Academy rewarded this performance. Meanwhile, Oppenheimer, a dull glorification of masculinity, took home Best Picture. This year, an exotic dancer, a failed Cinderella of sorts, secured Mikey Madison the Best Actress Oscar for a film packed with obscenities, explicit sexual content, nudity, and drug use, regardless of how emotionally charged its conclusion may be. However, Anora raises a deeper issue. The film, arriving in the wake of the Me Too movement and the numerous revelations about Harvey Weinstein, glorifies sexual exploitation in a world already scarred by the disastrous consequences of such representations. Hollywood praises a misogynistic vision of women while condemning Donald Trump's sexist remarks or Roger Ailes' behavior. Yet when it comes to women's dignity, Hollywood hardly does better than conservative circles. Women are often reduced to sexual objects, meant for men's pleasure, their offspring, their storylines, and their Oscars. Neon, the independent distribution company behind Anora, ran an Oscar campaign as bold as it was effective. While major studios relied on traditional methods, private screenings, lavish ads, Neon set up a pop-up Anora merchandise sale in front of a Los Angeles auto garage, selling t-shirts and even thongs featuring the film's logo. This unconventional approach paid off. For the second time since its founding in 2017, Neon won Best Picture, an achievement neither Disney nor Netflix has managed. The Oscar campaign for Anora cost $18 million, 3 times the film's production budget. Though the film grossed only $16.1 million domestically and $41.4 million worldwide, digital sales, rentals, and licensing are expected to make the project profitable, especially given its online success. Conclusion. More films of this kind need to be directed by women. That alone would bring a radical shift in storytelling and perspective. I have nothing against Mikey Madison, but I found this win both unexpected and undeserved. Besides, there's no point in expressing solidarity with night workers when receiving an Oscar. Might as well call for the decriminalization of their work instead. This victory somewhat validates the premise of the substance, while revealing a troubling message. The Academy only truly celebrates women when they have little control over their own stories. Certainly not when, even with imperfect means, an Elizabeth Sparkle dares to challenge the injustice of a system, even if it means blowing it up in its face. What do you think? Do you believe Anora truly deserved its Oscar? Do you think the Academy still has a long way to go in representing women fairly and complexly on screen? Leave your comments, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth discussions on cinema and pop culture. Like this video if you think Hollywood needs to change the way it tells women's stories, and share it to make your voice heard. See you soon for more debates.